war against Napoleon.
Hello, everybody.
They financed the
Welcome to
Bolshevik
Stories of
Revolution.
Prayer.
They financed hit.
How are you today? Welcome to Stories in Prayer, which is a live stream tonight, Friday night. We're going to talk about some things I was watching today. I was watching about some creatures that are legendary in West Virginia, the Flatwoods monster, and also the, what was it called? The Scape Ore, I forget the name of this town. It's Scape Ore Swamp. Have you ever heard of the Scape Ore Swamp lizard man? That one is a really strange one. Yeah, it's actually baffling how strange that one is. But let me see if I play this video, if you can hear it right now. And I want to hear it in my headphones, which I do not.
They financed the production of IBM's punching machine.
And that's not the way you should hear it.
The consistent descriptions
and
of
their
multiple
entities.
witnesses.
I need to go into properties and make sure I have the monocaster set up.
Patterns of
500
damage.
billion.
Sorry, I
Sorry,
didn't set up
No
my
known
When you
microphone.
have that much money and
And
power,
the fact that
you
many
can
of
So-
those
just
witnesses,
the
like
crown
George
prince of
Holloman
Great
and
Britain,
Robert
Okay.
Cooper,
like he's
were
your
highly credible people who had
This guy
nothing to gain
talking
from making
Oppose
these
their
stories
power
up.
and
The
try
thing
to
is,
Should be able to
the
hear
lizard
him.
man wasn't just
Your
seen by
banking system.
teenagers
Monitor.
out
Setting up a
or
central
people
bank
who
in
might have been
your
drinking.
country
We're
that
talking about
loans money to
construction
you at
workers.
insane
Okay, how about
rates.
monitoring output?
Ordinary
Never pay
people
back,
going about
so
their
that
daily
your country
lives.
becomes
These
the
sightings
eternal
have
slave
Suddenly it
trade.
works.
Because I live in Manchester, there's a Jewish area in Manchester, right?
Now,
I go to the
skeptics
Prestwich
might
Park.
say,
You know,
All you have to do is turn it off and turn it back on again. Now I have two windows
So I got
playing at the
speaking to
same
these
time.
Jewish
Hold
people,
on.
And I was talking about loans and stuff like
All right, now. Okay. Few little house cleaning volume bits there. Okay, let's make sure when you're listening to me, you can hear me, right? And when I go to the window of the screen I'm playing, you can still hear me, but let's see if you can also hear the video.
that. And they said, "Oh, we don't do the loans that you do in our Jewish community."
What happened to them
I
again?
will, if I'm Jewish, I go and borrow money
Let's
off the
go
Jewish,
to
whatever the person that
monitor.
does the loans, at no interest,
back
and I
on.
just pay the money. So if I borrow £1,000,
See,
I pay
there it is.
£1,000 back.
There
That
it
is it.
is.
It's no interest whatsoever. That is what the Jewish people do with each other. They tax everybody.
All right. Talking about taxes. Okay, let's do it on this one and make sure while we get into this tonight, welcome. Let's talk. Put in the chat whatever you would like to talk about. Please put up a topic. We can look up anything. I like to talk about paranormal experiences, UFOs, aliens. We can talk about government cabal. We can talk about military industrial complex projects that you might know of, but mostly UFOs. I avoid politics. I mean, by what I talk about by politics, I'm not interested in Republican or Democrat because it's all the same boat. It's two sides of the same coin, as they say. So, guess what? When you go to vote, you only have two choices. It's not like you have 15 or 100 choices. You only have two, and they keep it that way. And if you even, the third party, all you're doing is giving away your vote to the more dominant party if you vote for the third party, because it's never going to be big enough to conquer the other two, red or blue. And I'm a poet, and I didn't know it. So, welcome. If you're here, come on in. Let's talk about it. I just got a new laptop, so I'm learning. I'm using OBS right now, and in my MacBook, and I've been tuning and honing for the last couple of days the ways that my screens interact and how I monitor what I'm hearing and setting the volume levels and making sure when I stream I'm set up for YouTube and that I have my XLR microphone going through the laptop, all that stuff. There's actually a 290 nanosecond delay. Is it nanoseconds? Milliseconds. I have a 290 millisecond delay between when I say something and when the sound actually hears it. So I had to count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and make sure it lined up. And I had to get them. I don't know if you've ever done that, but that's interesting. But you have to go through a lot of setup to get this all to work right. So if I have any snafus or anything that's in trouble, let me know. Otherwise, I like to just show you and talk about subjects that I'm interested in that I watched today, because I usually watch YouTube when I'm not doing anything else, and I'm in my home, at my desk or in bed. I will watch YouTube. I like YouTube. It's better than television because you can watch any topic you like. And if you choose to watch television shows, for which I don't know why, you can find a lot of them actually on other social media platforms. If it's not, there are other platforms, not only YouTube, but you have Rumble. That's the second one that I watch. There's also BitChute. I haven't been on there for, it's been 7 years. I'm not sure what's on BitChute these days, but I think it was at the time I found out that the people who started BitChute came out of the military-industrial complex, so it was suspect of being set up as a spying platform. So I just never got interested in BitChute. But I think some of the things that we watch on YouTube are also uploaded on even TikTok, Rumble, BitChute, YouTube. I use mainly YouTube because I have a channel, even though it's quite small. I like to talk about things that I would think do not offend or would get deleted. I'm not going to have any copyright infringements. Even though I'm a musician, I'm not getting into singing or doing songs. I even thought about starting a channel where I would learn a song every day, someone else's song. But I would never make money that way unless I got a sponsor, because what I do, like when I want to learn a song, all I have to do is find it. Usually I use YouTube. I was a street busker, and I would go out on the street, and if people say, hey, do you know such and such a song? I would say, come back tomorrow and I'll sing it for you. And on the guitar, I can pick out chords and play mostly anything that I hear. So all I needed to do was mainly memorize the lyrics. And I found out when you're busking, very seldom do people stay through the entire song. If they're walking by, they might pause and watch a couple of verses and the chorus and jam out, and then they walk off. So I thought, I'm just going to learn the first verse, the second verse, and the chorus. You don't have to learn the fancy intro or the fancy outro and the second bridge or another middle section that's completely in a different key and all. You don't have to do all that. All the people want to hear is the first verse that they recognize, and then the chorus when it hits. Maybe the second verse. If you don't remember the second verse, you can repeat the first verse. So I was just going to do this on a daily basis. I was going to pick a song and learn it. And then it occurred to me after a while that, I'd never be able to make money that way if I wanted to have monetization on YouTube, because I would be facing all kinds of copyright issues. But if I did that in a way, I could still do that. If it became popular enough, I could get sponsors. And then you make money with sponsors, which can be good starting out. I was watching a YouTuber today, Wonder Hussy. Has anybody ever heard of Wonder Hussy? Some of you are saying, yeah, maybe not. Let's see, Wonder Hussy. She's a woman that lives in Pahrump, Nevada, and she has lived in Las Vegas forever. She was she went from being a cigarette girl at different casinos. She lived out there for 20-something years, and she's been on game shows like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and she's quite interesting. She likes to hike, and she goes all over the deserts in Nevada, and she finds interesting sites and tells you all about them. Here's her site. If you look through there, you'll places in Nevada you would have never heard about. She likes to find hot tubs, natural hot springs, and go in them. And she's got what she calls her magic bikini. She skinny dips, but she has a graphic pink bikini that she covers herself with when you watch the video. But she's very interesting. She's about to hit 300,000 subscribers. And I was just watching her this morning, and what just brought that up? Because, let me see. What was it today? I guess she was doing Ask Me Anything herself, and she was talking about something that she found. Anyway, she goes also around Northern California, Colorado. She was in Colombia, outside of Bogota, places where I've been. I've been to all over Colombia. She went to Australia. She got her phone taken away from her, her iPhone, in Pine Gap, Australia, for photographing something she should not have. But shout out to Wonder Hussy. She says Wonder Hussy because she was a nude model. Strangely enough, this woman would go and take men she would make appointments with in Las Vegas, photographers, and she would drive them out into the desert to interesting sites where it would be landscapes and trees or things that are old, beaten down, painted, spray painted vehicles or things that would make interesting photos for a nude model. And she would drive the photographers to the scene, take all the pictures, and drive them back to Vegas and charge them, I don't remember what it was, $500, $800, over the last 20 years. And then she said that she got long in the tooth and she had to quit. But she's an interesting person. Especially, I like learning all about these small towns in Nevada. They all look the same to me a little bit. And she hikes a lot. She's constantly hiking. And she lives in the Tecopa, Pahrump area in Nevada, which is in Death Valley. And it's very hot. So I'm sharing with you what I watch on YouTube. I caught that this morning when she put out a video just this morning, which I can't find to go. The last one I find in here is one from 5 days ago.
Hello, Wonder Hussy here in the middle of nowhere again. This time, I'm on my way home. I'm just coming back from a trip to Arizona. And on my way back from Arizona, I stopped off in Vegas.
Yeah.
And then I stopped off in Pahrump to run a bunch of errands in the big cities since we don't have any services out here. Living on the edge of Death Valley definitely has its benefits. Like, just listen to how absolutely still it is right now.
People have different YouTube channels they watch.
But although living out here in the middle of nowhere does have its benefits, it also has a significant number of drawbacks, including the fact that there aren't any services out here. That I like to watch. Man, I've been on the go all day running errands.
She's an interesting individual.
Running errands in Pahrump, and I'm finally on my way back.
Oh, she likes
down
armpit
this
hair, if you
lonely
notice.
desert highway to the edge of civilization.
She's
where
all
I
natural.
have, for better or for worse, chosen to live. But I decided to stop and do one last thing before I head back to the ranch. Dang, a traffic jam right here.
Oh, this is a
at the
wall where
world-famous
there's petroglyphs.
Charles Brown stripe. I've filmed here before. This is this really interesting geologic formation on the highway that runs from the quaint little town of Shoshone into the equally quaint little town of Pahrump. And this stripe is world famous to geologists all over the place. They come out here, and it's not uncommon to see vans parked here with a bunch of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed geologists.
I noticed this when I lived in Utah, and I used to drive through Arizona, going back to Texas, back to Houston, when I lived there. And, excuse me, I would notice when you're driving through the desert, you see these lines like this. but they're at an angle. How did they get tilted, jilted? What's the word? What's the word I'm thinking of? They're tilted. Why are they not level? You know, you see the lines that would be like from sedimentation from water levels, or maybe some catastrophic events over time. But how in the world do they become not level anymore and to where they're at an angle? But you'll see this all over. I remember driving between Utah and down to like the Lake Powell area, and you'll see formations like this a lot off the highway. And I've asked myself this question a lot. These are ancient cataclysms where the world has been busted up, and you know. So this stripe that we're looking at, I guess she's going to talk about it. Let's hear what she's saying about it.
Biology students looking at this thing, taking notes, drooling. Dang, there's a lot of traffic out here today. Anyway, yeah, this Charles Brown stripe is apparently a very significant formation. My layperson's understanding is that it's a layer of compressed volcanic ash from a giant volcanic explosion something like 400,000 years ago that got compressed between these two layers of rock to the point where it turned shiny black. It got vitrified. Okay, I think that's the fancy scientific term for this stripe. It's vitrified volcanic ash, meaning
Yeah, but why is it not
has
level?
become glassified. That's what vitrified means. So I guess because of the pressure of these other two layers of rock, it squeezed the ash together and turned it into an obsidian-like material.
What do they call it? There's the words for the tectonic plates of the earth when one goes underneath the other. Was it sublimation? When one goes up, that's what I think caused this. Is like part of the earth went underneath another part of the earth, and they got scrunched together, and it raised up at an angle, like what looks like a 25-degree angle. And it's just fascinating to think that the earth moves and shakes and crumbles in that fashion and leaves these marks that people study.
And since there appears to be a lull in the traffic jam, I'll go ahead and go across the street and give you a close-up view of this Charles Brown stripe. And again, I've done this.
So that is the Wonder Hussy channel. That's one thing I was watching today. Let me show you another video that I watched today, which is something else. This is the lizard man of Scape Ore Swamp. There is this man here. He's a young man. He's not alive anymore. He was murdered over a drug deal, I believe. But this guy, I think it was in 1988, he was driving home from his fast food job, and he was attacked by a 3-fingered reptilian man-sized monster that jumped on his car. It was on the roof of his car. He was going really fast, and he had to slam on the brakes and make it fall off on the highway. And he got home, and he's told his dad, and the marks were on the car, proof of what he was talking about. And it got in the paper, and it became national news. And that was my freshman year of college. I don't remember that, people talking about this in 1988. But you would think I would have remembered that. Let's see what they're saying about it. I'll show you different parts of it. It's interesting. There are more than one witness.
Or elaborate hoaxes, but at home, he couldn't bring himself to turn off the engine. He kept thinking, what if that thing followed me home? But despite that possibility, he decided that he would turn off the car as fast as he could and make a run for it. And in one fluid motion, Christopher practically ripped the key out of the ignition, jumped out of the car, and ran to the door as fast as he could. Because it was early in the morning, he tried his best not to slam the door, but that didn't go well. Once inside, Christopher's father, who was up, immediately knew something was wrong. He was getting ready for work and saw just how pale and shaken his son looked. When his father asked what had happened, Christopher just broke down and sobbed. He told his father everything.
Shout out to What Lurks Beneath.
Such an outlandish story, but there was something different about this. His son was genuinely terrified. More importantly, there was physical evidence. Christopher's father called his boss and explained to him that he would be late and that his son wasn't feeling well. A few hours later, when the sun came out, Christopher and his father went out to examine the car, and what they found was disturbing. There were deep scratches all over the roof, and the chrome on his mirrors was completely mangled. The right side of his car had bizarre three-finger scratch marks that looked like they'd been made by something with immense strength. His father stood there staring at the damage, not saying a word, and after examining the car, Christopher's father went back inside and immediately called his boss at the steel mill where he worked. Christopher's father had never missed a day of work in the 7 years he'd been there. Still, his son had clearly just experienced something so far removed from what you and I consider normal. He was still very shaken.
This man that does What Lurks Beneath this channel, he's a good storyteller, but this guy would be great if you were going to sleep and you wanted to hear a story. You might doze off and have to wake up and rewind, but he goes into a lot of detail, and he tells it like a storyteller that he's, and you can tell he embellishes a little bit. It's hard to tell stories in a good way, where people, you keep their interest, but if you tell more interest, he slowly reached for his keys, and then in one desperate last grasp, clutched them in his hands, and then thrust the key into the ignition as he started the engine, and it began to roar with a menacing hum. He could see the being of brute. He goes into these elaborate descriptions. Let's hear it. He's good, actually.
Sitting at the kitchen table with his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that he hadn't touched, staring into space. After his father finished on the phone.
See? He had his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that he hadn't touched. Who told him that? Well, my son, I saw him in the kitchen, and he was sitting there with a cup of coffee with his hands wrapped around it, and he hadn't touched it.
Phone with his boss, he made several more calls. First to the sheriff's office, and then to friends who might know something about strange animals in the area. He even called the local newspaper, figuring that if something dangerous was out there, people needed to know about it. And he kept checking on Christopher, who was still too rattled to sleep despite being exhausted from his night shift and what had just transpired. A short time later, Sheriff Liston Truesdale from the Lee County Sheriff's Office arrived at their home. And after speaking with Christopher for about 10 minutes, he was initially skeptical, but as he walked around the car and saw the sheer volume of damage, let's just say he quickly changed his tune. These weren't the marks you'd see in a car accident or vandalism. They were very different, and in all his years with law enforcement, these marks were not made by any animal he was familiar with. However, folks, this was just the first chapter. 2 weeks after this initial encounter, Tom and Mary Wayne woke up on the morning of July 14th, 1988, like any other morning. They rolled out of bed, stretched, and went to start their morning ritual, which was to make their coffee and let their dog, Beamer, a basset hound, out to go potty. After Wayne police to report what had happened, but neither they nor the officers who came to take statements could explain perhaps the strangest detail of all: three-toed footprints left in the mud.
Three-toed
surrounding the
footprints.
vehicle. Even more terrifying is that these footprints came from the swamp.
Just about every state in the United States has a creature or a swamp monster. There's from the New Jersey Devil to the Scape Ore Swamp creature to the other one I'm going to show you. which is the, where is it? The Flatwoods creature. So this one is a three-toed reptilian, man-sized creature that will chase people and attack their cars and shred them. Do you believe it? Here's the Flatwoods monster.
We have examined several encounters with strange entities, which took place in remote North American communities.
Show you.
In many of these cases, framing a bright red head and face.
Here's what the Flatwoods monster looks
The beam
like.
from Lemon's torch. The dim light caught only fleeting glimpses of a strange figure, but even those few features were sufficient to ignite an immediate and overwhelming sense of terror in those standing below. Somehow suspended in mid-air was a humanoid figure approximately 10 feet tall, emitting a green mist from its body, similar to the eerie substance emanating from the nearby object. It was attired in what looked like a dark green cloak which rose up to form a hood, the shape of which resembled the ace of spades, framing a bright red head and face.
Now, what kind of creature could this be? You know, we've,
The beam from Lemon's
according to
torch
what
just picked
aliens
out
people
what
talk
resembled
about,
a pair of claw-like talons at the extremities of the creature's arms.
we've heard
when
about the
something even more
Greys.
bizarre took place. 2 columns
You
of red
know,
light.
This one, here it's got lights that beam out of its eyes like laser beams. But what kind of creature is this? We've heard about the typical ones. You know, you have your gray aliens, which are of a few types, right? You have the little one, the little bitty ones. You have the naked ones, and you have the ones that are smarter and more intelligent and communicate more with people and are more benevolent, and they're nice and they don't torture you and probe you, and they wear suits, little silvery suits. And then you have what they call the Nordics, right? Which are like the tall, blonde haired ones, but they don't talk. When their voice comes out, it sounds like a dove or like a bird chirping. You have tall whites, which are reported by Charles Hall in the desert when he was in Nevada, in a testing range doing weather balloons. You have reptilians like this, the three-fingered creature. What about the Varginha monster down in Brazil? I've been to Varginha. I used to visit chicken farms, and I've actually been to Varginha. It's out in the outer outskirts of the province of the state of São Paulo in Brazil. We used to go to Varginha. But this monster on the screen here, what of the ones I mentioned, which one would this be? Is it the reptilian? It's not a gray. Did they say it had 3 fingers or hands? But yet it's more shaped like a man, but yet its head is bright red and its eyes are bright red and emit a laser beam, and it wears a cloak with a hood. So what type of creature is that? I don't know of many any other cases in the world where people talk about that one. So I found that one today, and then I looked up this video on it, and I don't know what to think about it. I've never heard of this creature. In the comments, let me know if you have.
The May household called the state police for assistance. Meanwhile, the health of several individuals who had been present in the woods rapidly deteriorated. Not only were several of those who had encountered the entity affected by dizziness and vomiting, but the family dog was also in a bad way. The police officers listened impassively as the witnesses related their tale, exchanging quizzical looks before they later headed off into the woods themselves. They would return.
You know, they got sick. They first started when these boys were playing outside with their neighbor kid, these 3 kids. And they saw this red orb descend over the hill there away from their house. And they went and they told their mother about it. So she called a man that was in the National Guard. She thought he'd be good to drag along, and another friend, and who brought a friend with him, and the mom and the 3 kids. There were 7 people that went back, and that's when they found this orb that looked like this. And it was red and it was glowing, and it had a green mist around it on the ground. It was a low-lying green mist on the ground. But suddenly they heard a hissing noise, and they looked up in the trees, and that's when they saw this creature that emitted those lights from its eyes and was hissing. But I don't think it came towards them and at them, but it did not touch them, or I don't believe it scratched anybody. Or, I think one of the stories I heard about today, the creature
before,
scratched the guy's back.
A young girl named Audra Harper and her friend had been taking a shortcut
Not
home
in a
through
nice way.
woodland near the town of Heaters, located not far from Flatwoods.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the skies above them were bathed in an eerie red glow, which appeared to be emanating from a large orb that had landed atop a nearby hillside. Disturbed by a movement behind them, the two girls turned to see an impossibly tall and thin shadowy figure emerging from within the adjoining tree line.
Right there.
They immediately ran off as quickly as they could, later sharing the encounter with their parents, who had instead admonished them for walking alone in the woods after
This was
dark.
2 weeks before the other event.
Then, a married
In
couple
the same
named
area.
Edith and George Snatowski came forwards to describe an incident which they claimed had taken place the day after the May family sighting. That evening, the husband and wife had been travelling in their car with their 18-month-old son along Route 4, around 20 miles south of Flatwoods. Without any warning, the engine of their car had cut out, causing it to coast to a complete stop, where it had then stubbornly refused to restart.
Yeah.
George had then popped the bonnet and stepped out of the vehicle to investigate further, when
The
he
hood.
suddenly stopped, as both he and the car were illuminated by a bright light coming
The
from
bonnet
above.
is the hood.
Overcome by an intense smell of sulfur, a dark figure materialized on the road ahead of him and began to make its way towards the car. Taking refuge back inside the vehicle, George and Edith watched as this reptilian-like figure approached, resting its hands on the bonnet and peering in at them through the
It looks like
windows in an
Skeletor.
inquisitive manner. Seemingly satisfied with what it had observed, this unearthly visitor then turned and walked back the way it came, vanishing with the light being cast down onto the scene. Not long after, the engine of the Snatowski's car had inexplicably fired back into life, allowing them to continue with their journey. As with many
incredible.
similar incidents from the North American mainland, the Flatwoods monster has
Be
gone
right
on to
back.
cement itself firmly in supernatural lore. It has been depicted in movies and television shows, as well as being recreated as an antagonist in the highly successful video game franchise, Fallout. And yet, with no apparent physical evidence that the incident ever took place, is there anything more to this tale than the questionable testimony of a small group of people? Skeptics point to alterations in the descriptions of the creature provided by the May family and their associates, as the story inevitably went on to gain traction across the country, and later, internationally.
Okay, I'm back.
For instance, the figure was originally described as
Is
having
anybody
been
in
of
here
average
yet?
human
In the
height,
chat,
but
please
appears
comment
to
if
have
you're
grown
here.
to twice that
Give me a
size
topic to talk
over
about
a
if you want to look
lifetime
up
of
anything.
successive retellings.
I'm just going over what I looked at
Elsewhere,
today.
the complexion of the entity was somewhat unclear. Both Edward and Fred were convinced it was robotic in nature, most likely some form of automated guardian or sentinel, which may have acted to try and cover up this event, along with several others that occurred around the same time, for reasons which remain unknown. Imaginations to fill in the gaps.
Was it
The
this
national
one?
media generated a great others that occurred around the same. Apparently, they had seized metal fragments and oily residue which they had discraft. UFO sightings that were being reported at the time.
Yeah, this one.
As part of
There was a
increased
pilot
offensive
that was
strategy
sent from Tampa,
generated by
Florida,
the
I
wave
think,
of UFO sightings that were being reported at the time.
to go look at this.
But not
chase
long
this
after
red
it had
orb.
arrived within its patrol area, the Starfire unexpectedly disappeared from
This was
radar
in the
screens,
50s,
prompting a
1952.
far-reaching yet unsuccessful search and rescue mission. In the years that followed, all record of the aircraft and its crew, John Jones Jr. and John Del Curto, were quietly removed from United States Air Force records.
Okay, whoa, wait a minute there. So here we have 3 different groups of people who've seen the same being that looks like Skeletor with the blood red head and the red eyes. It was the kids playing by the house at night, and then the 2 girls that saw it 2 weeks before, and then the couple driving the car where the being actually came up to the hood of the car and put its hands on the hood. And then there was this vehicle. I think the military, I don't know how they got this story. Someone was a whistleblower. But the pilot in a F-94 Starfire, if you look up that airplane, it's from the 50s. It was the first generation jet that we had in the military. And they sent this Starfire jet out there. And that's what this guy just said, is that the crew of that jet, 2-man jet, their names have been scrubbed from the military. The jet disappeared. And then quietly, these 2 men's names were just scrubbed away from the military. They're not even on the list, like they were ever even in the Air Force. Actually, at that time, it was the Army Air Force. Did you know that? It was not until after Roswell in 1947. No, wait, this was 52. I'm thinking 58. I'm thinking Korean War time. Never mind. But that's pretty bad when the claims are that the military actually got rid of the names of these 2 men like they never even existed in the Air Force. Somebody was covering up something, so that jet took off and was sent out to go find something, and then disappeared. People searched and searched and searched for it, and then as the years went on, people went back to look back on this file, and the names had disappeared like they never existed. Things like that happened in the military, because this is what Eisenhower warned about: the military-industrial complex having too much power. You know, if they, let's say there was an alien being and there was a craft and it was something that the military knew about, and it landed in West Virginia and people saw it, and somebody's dog almost died, and investigators came out and blah, blah, blah. During those times in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, and even the 70s, people would disappear or people would die if they mentioned aliens or anything to do with spacecraft or any anti-gravity ships. People were made fun of, and the military would just deny, and then people would disappear, end up in insane asylums. It was a terrible life for people who became visited by these beings. But today, it does not seem to matter. And you know what? I am one of them. Yes, when I was 6 years old, grays. Yes, that is true. With my mom, 6 years old out in the yard. I forgot for 48 years. We're in 2026. It was 2018. So about 8 years ago, I was getting up in bed in the morning, and I got up and I sat on the edge of the mattress, and I was looking for my slippers, my flip-flops. And flash, I see these gray aliens outside of my window that I had in my bedroom when I was 6 years old in Houston. And hold on. So I thought, wow. It was a strange image, but it seemed familiar at the same time. And then I didn't think anything of it. It just could have been imagination or a hangover from the dream I was having. A hangover image. So I didn't think about it at all. And then it kept happening. And then I would have different images of different scenes. And it became a memory that just started popping out like, this really happened, I think. And then my mother was there. I saw my mother walking across the front yard out the window in one scene, in one of the flashbacks. So I went to her house, and she was bedridden at the time, and I used to go over and cook for her sometimes, bring her food. Her husband would take care of her a little bit. My stepdad, he worked at NASA, and my father also worked at NASA. But I went over there with her, and we were watching a Hallmark movie after dinner in her room. And I suddenly remembered, ask Mom about the gray aliens. And I thought, oh, Mom, wait, can you pause the movie? I got to ask you a question. Pause it. And she grabbed the remote and she goes, yeah, what? What? And I said, did I ever tell you about, like, that I had aliens that visited me at the house we used to live over there on that road when I was 6 years old? And she looked up and she goes, mm-hmm. They were in the east yard up front. What? I said, oh my God, you're kidding me. So it really happened. And she goes, mm-hmm. You were there too? Hmm. So I think what happened, have you ever heard about suppressed memories? There are people who have suppressed memories and you don't remember until you suddenly remember. And I've seen this in movies, and I was just like you. If you've never experienced this, I was in your shoes, and I would hear this and I would think, that's strange. How would you just not remember something that bizarre and foreign and out of this world and literally alien that you would not remember it? But there are victims of abuse, for example, that do not remember their abuse. And that's how altered personalities start. I actually know someone, I'm just going to say it, that I was married to, that has confessed. Not all the time, but when she's extremely depressed, everyone has their own voice in their head. You talk to yourself, right? But when you start to hear maybe a voice of a different gender or different voices that have different tonality, definitely not your voice, that's a problem. But your mind can create those, and they're to protect you. If you've been severely abused, your mind just automatically splits. It's called splitting. Your mind goes off and creates these alters, and you won't even know it. And I have another family member. I'll just tell you, it's my sister. Oh my God. Here I am. I'm this guy right now live streaming on Friday night. Let's talk about aliens and paranormal stuff. She's not. She is like one of these people like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. She's not awake to any conspiracy topics or anything. She doesn't like it. And that's okay. But she hounds me. And, I'm the one that when we go to holiday meals and we go Thanksgiving or Christmas, it's like, oh no, if he comes, I hope he doesn't bring up a conspiracy theory, if Alex is here. But, sometimes all I'll have to do is say something like something that supposedly everybody knows. Like maybe, I don't know, I'm not going to give an example, but let's just say, let's take something that most people know or is a meme. A meme is like you have memes on TikTok and the shorts. Memes are when people or scenes are made fun of and jokes and they're passed around, they become viral. And you have a meme topic, like have you ever heard of let's say cats flushing toilets, so I would just bring up a topic and suddenly my whole family would be looking at me like, oh my God, they're so disconnected. I don't get it. It's like they're not even living on this planet. Or, what? Are you locked in a box all day? How do you not hear about this stuff? How do you not, like, let's say a topic like QAnon. I don't follow Q. I've never liked it. I don't believe it. I don't believe JFK Jr. is still alive. I know he died in that plane crash. There was actually a fourth person in that plane, an instructor who bailed out and his chair was missing. And anyway, just topics like, if you've ever covered it, I've looked it up and I've done some research on it. But everyone in my family, I wish I had one family member that would come out and say, hey, even secretly on the side, hey, Alex, when you were talking about that topic, I like that topic, and I looked into it, and I said, I just don't want to tell mom or sister, she'll freak out. But at least it'd be great to have one person in the family, even my nephew or some other people in extended family. But there's no one is into it. Any conspiracies of any type. And they think they're all theories. I tell them I'm a truther. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. If I've ever told you anything, it's not a theory. I've done the research and it's real. And even my sister told me, even though the things you say that you talk about, sometimes they might be real, but she says, I just don't like to talk about them because they make me feel bad. So you can spell out things that the way the world works and things that directly affect you in your life, and you should change the way that you behave or act to avoid problems or mishaps. And some people would rather just hit head on to the confrontations and mishaps without be clueless, let's say. They'd rather be clueless than know anything. So, and that's disheartening a lot of times when people don't listen. So I'm having that problem with my family. I've had it for a couple of decades. It's been 18 years, I would say, since I first brought up some topics after my divorce from my baby mama. But that's another thing. What happens when your family, you divorce your baby mama and the family's on her side? What? So I think a lot of us would share. If you're listening to me and you found my video and I'm in your algorithm for some reason, you can relate to and you know what I'm talking about. We are different. There's something about why we came to this earth, whether we chose to come at this time in the place where we were born or not. So I was listening to someone talk about somewhere today that we may have chosen, we had some unfinished thing that maybe we wanted to come back to Earth and reincarnate. Oh, it's Osgard, the woman who made the fall of the Cabal, Janet Osabard. She was saying you may have come back to incarnate again on Earth because you wanted to do something that maybe you didn't get done in a previous life. But I would ask, how can you choose what you're going to do? Because you have a veil over your eyes. When you come to Earth and you're born, you don't remember your previous life. Some people say you do remember as a baby. You just can't communicate it. Up to 2 years old, 3 years old, people remember their previous life, if they've had one. And, but how would you, if you're in a spirit world and you decide, I'm going to incarnate again, so you come back into the moon loop and you line up with your spherical toroidal spirit and you line up like a bowling ball. You ever been in a bowling alley? You know how the bowling balls just come out of the machine? Next. And some creature picks you up and tosses you into a womb and you're conceived. Well, why is it that people say that, well, maybe you came back to this earth because in a previous incarnation, you didn't finish all the things you wanted to do, and so you thought you needed to come back so that you could finish your work. Well, I have a problem with that because how are you supposed to remember what your work is if you have a veil put over your eyes and you don't remember anything? You don't remember any previous lives. 99.9999% of people don't remember a previous life or know that they were ever alive before this on this earth. So why would they say that? Maybe you didn't finish your work, so you wanted to come back. Or maybe in general terms, if you're just here, I think the fact that if you have a spirit like mine and you're a like-minded person, a like-spirited person like me, you're just going to affect good just by being here because we're just that good of people. So that's the way it is. Even though we might not remember specifically, I came back to do X. Maybe it'll hit me in a flashback like I had about the Greys. Life isn't over yet. We've got a lot of years left to go on my clock. So we can think about it. But, sometimes when you're wondering in life, like, what's my next project or the thing that I really bite into, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm looking at YouTube. I'm starting now this new Stories and Prayer show. So I'm coming on live after midnight, and I want to catch people who are up at this hour, because this is the hour when people do research, especially on a Friday night. Let me say a prayer really quick. Heavenly Father, please bless those people who would like to participate in conversations about their purpose on earth, spirituality, the world we live in, life's purpose, discuss the leadership of the world and the evils and the problems and the turmoil and the wars and how we can try to improve or help people, victims. People want to talk about that. Let them come into this video, into this chat room now, please. Amen. I'm waiting. It'll come. So, I was going to tell you about the flashback, suppressed memories. People have suppressed memories where you don't remember, and you don't remember that you don't remember because you don't remember. And I swear I told you about like this alien experience I had when I was 6 years old. I didn't remember that. But yet now that I remember it, I knew about it the whole time. And I never remembered it. It's like I was just like you. If you haven't had one of those experiences, I would sit in movie theaters and watch movies and talk about aliens with people and sit over at, we'd go on date nights and double dates, people from church, or be at a church. So what do you think? You think aliens exist? I don't know. It's always a topic, like at work, or, it might come up at lunch with somebody. And I was just like you. I was just like all the rest of you. Just, I don't know, man. I've seen this. I believe Travis Walton, but I don't know. Wonder how many people they visit and blah, blah, blah. Until one day, you're getting up out of bed and you turn and you look at the floor. You look at the wood floor beside your bed, and suddenly, what's those, what do they call it? The jump scares in the movies when you, in the sound, usually they have like some kind of vibrating humming sound, like zoom, flash. That's what it was like. It was just like, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I remember my whole life, what happened when I was 6. I was playing with the truck on the carpet, and they called me to the window, and they were like, Alex, come with us. I don't remember the exact wording, but I remember exactly. I can picture right where I was on the floor, and I had my donkey, my stuffed donkey. And then I got up and I went to the window, and there were 5 of them standing there in the window. And I communicated with them telepathically. So tell me about that. I can remember that right now. I can fully picture it. I remember everything except for the dialogue, the telepathic dialogue. But I know what the dialogue was about. Like, I know they called me to the window and they wanted me to go with them. I said, not without my mom. But then they went and they got my mother, and then I watched her outside. That's why I went to her house and asked her, did I ever talk about aliens? And she's like, oh yeah, they were in the front yard. Because I saw her in one of my flashbacks walking across the front yard towards the saucer. But a lot of people demonstrate disorders. Let's say, like, there's cluster disorders. You know what those are? It's because they're clustered together. There's 3 disorders that have very similar traits. And it's borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and histrionic personality disorder. Histrionic means acting, dramatic, drama. So these 3 disorders, I remember my professor, I studied it when I was getting my associate degree. I took psychology, and the professor said that people who have personality disorders, now this is not psychosis. You can have both, but personality disorder is different. It's not psychosis, where you have different personalities and everything. But you will not remember. And I'll tell you, it's like my sister. She'll never see this, so I can say it. And even if she does, I don't care. I will tell her things. Like just the other day, I was telling her about when the first time I was going to buy Bitcoin was in 2015. And I had some money, and my brother-in-law was working for a financial advisor company. And my sister calls me up, and she said, "Hey, do you know that, my husband's now working in with this big investment group? Maybe you could put some of your money over there and help him out." And I thought, oh, at that moment, before she ever called, I was going to buy 100%. I was going to buy Bitcoin. And because she called, and then I eventually wound up talking with him, she relayed, like she was the go-between. And then I eventually put my money in with his company, and then I missed the big jump in 2017. I was that close to buying Bitcoin. And, but it's one of those things, there's still going to be future opportunities, and I still have a lot of coins. I'm doing okay. But that big jump in 2017, I could slap myself for missing that one, because I was just, let's say, just a side note from a lunch, I think I'm going to buy some coins now, and I'll just take my balance out of this. How do you sign up on an exchange anyway? And I was going to do that. So I mentioned it to my sister about 2 months ago. I was talking to her on the phone, and I just happened to mention, now she's got what I think is narcissistic personality. I will say things to her and she does not remember. And everything else, she's super defensive on everything. She's the one that was always calling me like, "Oh my God." And she's telling me that all these topics freak her out. I'm just too much of a conversation. She calls me chatty. Yeah, I was dating this woman, and I came over, and my sister was at the house, and behind my back, my sister told my partner that, yeah, he's really chatty. Chatty. She can just be so negative and really hurt my feelings and insult me and tick me off and say things behind my back. And yet she calls me negative. Yeah. So I just happened to mention the other day, we were talking about Bitcoin and crypto. For some reason, the topic came. And I said, everybody's got a story about the first time they bought Bitcoin, or they were about to buy crypto, and maybe they didn't. People who were in crypto talk about when they first got in. And did you know that in 2015, I was going to buy Bitcoin? I'd made up my mind. And then you called me and said that your husband was working for this company. And she goes, "Oh, it was me. Oh, it was me." Suddenly she doesn't remember at all. And just because I'm not even pointing blame, or I'm not mad. It's funny. Everybody talks about the things that came up and why you didn't buy Bitcoin, or why, or what. And I said, I had made up my mind 100% I was going to buy. Oh, yeah. So suddenly she's mad because somehow she thinks I'm blaming her because I didn't buy Bitcoin. But what I'm really saying is it's just chance. Everything in life it's just chance. She just happened to call because her husband was working for a financial company. And if I helped him out, put some money in some accounts, it would have helped him. And I did. And looking back, hindsight's 2020. I didn't know that Bitcoin was going to go to the moon 20 times its value in one day in 2017. But I was going to own it. I would have owned it if she would not have called me that day. I would have been in there. But just the fact that I even implied that could have been a possibility. She's like, oh, and it was me that called you. Oh, sure it was. Okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, of course. It was me. Of course it was me. And I told her, I said, you called me. and you told me, you said, hey, did you know he's working for this? Yeah, so maybe you could put some money into his account. And I remember when she called me, I thought it was odd. Like, why doesn't he call me himself? I'm his brother-in-law. He should just call me. Instead, he puts his wife up to calling her brother to tell me about it, And now she's denying it. And this goes on with my sister all the time. Now I'm ranting about my sister in my life. But what we're talking about is flashbacks and not remembering. But it's part of personality disorders to have missing memories, missing time, and things that you just don't know. You pretend you don't know. I have my sister-in-law, in fact. I can tell her over and over, like, let's say, contact me when we were remodeling a condo one time. And I said, if you have to get a hold of me today, do not text me. Send me an email because I'm trading. I've got to get on 2 new exchanges, and the market in China just shut down, and I've got to do some movement, and I'm really busy. And I'm not going to have my phone next to me because I'm not going to have it blowing up all day while I'm busy. And so do not text. I just made it a point in the morning. I had a conversation. It wasn't on phone. I think it was an email. And I said, and she responded because we were going to buy some things from Home Depot that day that the remodeler needed. And I said, whatever you do, I just need to tell you one thing today. Don't text me today. Because sometimes when I'm really busy and I'm doing a lot of trading, advanced trading, I put my phone in the kitchen in a cookie jar. And I don't know if she just chose not to believe me or what, but she texted me. And the remodeler's coming in my office. He's like, did she send the order in yet? And I said, don't have the email yet. And he was waiting and waiting for a couple of hours. He was doing little odd stuff, trimming light sockets and little things when he could have been started one of the bathrooms, And it just turns into a night. How many people have had this happen to you where you will tell somebody, if there's one thing I tell you of anything that comes out of my mouth right now, watching this whole video, is do not text me. If you want to get my attention immediately, email me because I'm staring at my computer screen all day today. Every day from sun up until 2 p.m. Okay. And what happens? You text me. And the same thing with my sister. I would tell her, don't text me during the day from sun up to 2 p.m. That's when I trade. After 2 p.m., the day settles down. Then you can text me. But I'm not going to have my phone next to me if you text me. I was at the gas station at like 2:20 p.m. I just shut things down and I went to go get gas. And my sister's texting me. Just like it was just nothing. Well, she wasn't even thinking about the 2 o'clock, but she'll even text sooner. But the thing is, when you call them out, they don't apologize. Or they just stare at me. Or my sister-in-law was sending emails to an old Gmail account that I got rid of over a decade ago that she had in her contact file. Brother-in-law Alex, here's his email. And there's a Gmail account I set up when I had a job, when I got a new job, and I thought I would use it. And after a couple of months, I wasn't using it, and it fell into inactivity. And Google actually took it away. If you look on my Google account, that Gmail account does not exist anymore. Actually, now it does. I just reactivated it. But in 2020, it did not exist. And she was sending that, and I told her specifically, again, specific instructions. Use my Yahoo address. Do not send anything to that Gmail account. It doesn't exist anymore. And she was calling my sister going, I'm sending Alex questions about the remodeling. He's ignoring me. So she's steaming mad at me. Gaslighting my sister. She's mad at me. Everybody's mad at me. The order for the remodeler's not good. This whole condo restoration that we were doing, my mom's, was just a big fiasco where I turned out to be, to them, the bad guy, when the fact was she never emailed me. And they were sending texts to a phone in a cookie jar during the day. And I was never in the way, and we got everything done. But when what my stepsister would do was send me like a shotgun every email address I ever had, even work addresses. And she was, I don't know which one is your. I said, Yahoo, only Yahoo. And she'll send it to Gmail. And if you ask her about it, she go, oh, I was taking care of the kids. I couldn't pay attention. But yet she can spec homes and condos to remodel and restore and run labor every day on different sites for her job. But when the brother-in-law says, here's my email address, she can't use it. And she uses something that's in her phone from 2 decades ago. But anyway, about memories and flashbacks, there are people who will not remember any, like I said, like that alien experience. I had no idea about it. I was just like everyone else. And suddenly, boom. But the professor, when I took psychology, said, if people have altered personalities, it's from abuse, usually sexual abuse. But it's SA, let's say SA. I didn't mean to say that, but if you have different, well, I'm not being monetized anyway. So that just blew my mind that I said those 2 words. You're supposed to say SA'd. If someone is SA'd, then their memories will be wiped out and they won't remember. And then it'll create an altered personality. And that might be a male or a female. And it might be a good person or a bad person. And it starts to create psychosis. And depending on the number of events and how severe they were, or the number of different personalities you can have, or alters. And I know people in my family, I'm just going to say it, my ex-wife and my sister, they exhibit all of the signs constantly. I can say everything I've just told you up to now and ask you about it tomorrow, and you'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what the F you're talking about. We just talked about it yesterday. I told you 10 times, and I told you the other. Jeez, Alex, you're so negative. And I'm like, but really what it is, it's their own mind protecting them. And the professor of psychology said that people will have, when they've been SA'd before puberty. That's a key. It's SA before puberty. So you're talking before 10 years old, You've got memories that are completely wiped out and they don't remember. And then it creates this alter is what they call them. But you will have people like my ex told me one time. She's like, she had them during postpartum depression. 4 voices, 1 was male. And then about 10 years later, we were walking one time in the park at night after putting the kids to bed. We went down the alley and we were walking around the neighborhood. And she said, they're back. And I knew immediately what she was talking about as soon as she said that. And I said, the voices? She goes, yep. I said, what are you going to do? I said, you really need to go to a doctor, go to a psychologist, go to a psychologist. She said, nope. They'll take my children away. I said, oh, you have to. Yeah, nope. That was just out of the question. There's been a ton of problems from that in my life. But I don't know who was the perpetrator, but when someone outwardly tells you that they have altered personalities and that they hear voice, she always had to have music on, always had to have the radio on or loud noise anytime she was doing anything. She didn't have hobbies, because usually when you have a hobby, like if you're building ships inside of a bottle, you've got to concentrate. And usually when you're doing your hobby, you have time to think, and your mind tends to balance and organize itself, and it's healthy for you. You have time alone. Hobbies are good. But beware of people who do not have hobbies, because they constantly want distraction and noise, so that they don't have to hear the voices. And I know that that happened to her, my ex, but I suspect it was her oldest brother. I even know who I suspect, but I even asked her that night. I told her that. I said, you know, that psychologists say that if you have these things you're talking about, that you were SA'd as a child. Do you have any memories of anybody diddling or doing anything? She's like, no, no. There's no, you know, some people talk about their A, and it's a topic in their life, but to her, it's been a great life. There's nothing wrong, but yet she has altered personalities and all these symptoms. It's like where there's smoke, there's fire. There's smoke everywhere, but there's no fire. It's the weirdest thing. I think that happens to a lot more people than we know. And I'm sorry if that's somebody who's ever seen this video, even if you see it in playback. I don't know. How many participants do we have? Is there anybody in the chat? Any viewers? Say hello if you're in the chat. Give me a topic to talk about. I've talked about the Flatwoods creature, the, gosh, I keep forgetting the name of that creature. The Flatwoods monster and the lizard man of Scape Ore. These are creatures that I tend to think that those stories are true. Because if you had so many people talking about them and reporting them, you know, if you have the kids that saw it in the yard and then they went and got their mother, the mother got the man from the National Guard and the neighbor down the street and 2 more kids and then 7 people and then a couple the night before and then 2 girls 2 weeks before. And all these people reporting the same looking creature. How can it not be true? Unless these people are all tied together and put together. When people all are connected and work to pull off something that's shady, that's called conspiring. And they're doing a conspiracy. So unless all these people were in a conspiracy, which is very unlikely, but you know, back in the early 50s, to be talking about these things and describing the creature with the same details, you know, which is really odd. So I tend to wonder about that one. Like, it probably happened. So what creature was that? The Flatwoods monster and the Scape Ore Swamp monster, the 3-fingered lizard monster that tore up the front of this Dodge minivan and in someone's front yard after another man hit it and it was on the roof of his car. Just weird stuff. You hear about if you live in New Jersey, you've heard of the New Jersey Double. I don't know a lot of details about that, but I lived in South Jersey for a while, and people would talk about it because we lived just south of the Pine Barrens where it's supposed to live. But it seems like, you know, in the Northwest, you've got Sasquatch and Bigfoot sightings. And then, but on the Eastern Seaboard and on the East Coast, you have all of these weird reptilian creatures with 3 toes and creatures that fly or jump out of trees and things like that. Weird. And yet, where are they? Where's the proof? You know? Even when I say proof, like even Bob Lazar and people in Area 51 and the whole flying saucer technology, we know that it's the Greys that fly those. But then there's different ships that look more stout, not as saucer shaped, but they're more brick shaped with bumps and things all over them and with different colored lights. Those are probably reptilians or some other type creature, but aliens exist. It sounds crazy to talk about this. There have been enough people reporting these things, and I've seen them myself. The question is, what is that one that's got the red eyes, that's wearing a cloak that looks like Skeletor? Looks like a cross between Killmeister, Lemmy from Motorhead, wearing the Ace of Spades hat with the beaming red laser eyes. You know? What being was that? Another thing I was going to talk about tonight, has anyone heard of the fall of the Cabal? I was watching this video here. Janet Olsebard. I want to give a shout out to Sobering Stories. Has anyone seen this guy? Nick Petrovsky. This guy, he makes videos about people getting sober, and then he started doing videos on celebrities getting sober. And then he kind of shifted his video after about a year of being into it. He started going deep down the rabbit hole because it turns out that all these people like were going to Diddy parties, and he was talking about Brittany Murphy and Avicii, or what's his name, Avicii, and then Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington. Chris Cornell and I were born on the exact same day, about 2 hours apart. And now that he's passed, I don't get my free horoscopes anymore. So, and I love to sing like him too, man. I would put on some albums in my car on the way to work and scream. That's all I did all the way to work. I drove a half an hour to work and back for a long time when I lived in the Plano area north of Dallas. Going down the tollways, screaming for half an hour to work and a half an hour. I got so much song practice. I was actually going out and busking and singing at Blues Jam too, so I was using it. But I could really hit the high notes with Chris. I like that. And the fact that we were born on the same day. I was really upset when he was offed. I don't believe for 1 minute that he self-exited. It was done to him. I don't believe he self-exited at all. So I was watching this sobering story about him on this channel. There's one on Chris Cornell with this guy. It's called Sobering Stories. But today, he just put out this video about the disappearance of Janet Olsebard. And I'm thinking, I don't even know who Janet Olsebard is. And he's talking about this. What has he found? So I started watching it. And she turns out to be this person. And why do I not have sound on that one?
What was going on? They released the sequel in 2021, and this one took a lot longer to make, but it's also a lot more parts and a lot more in depth.
This woman, Janet Olsebard,
and
she made the fall of the Cabal
than the initial series did.
Video.
So they're actually making this series all the way through 2023. Both being from the Netherlands, Janet and Cynthia decided to leave the Netherlands because they decided it was just too much of a police state, especially considering what happened in their unthinkable but true story they tell on Janet's YouTube page about Joost Neville. He was in a very similar position as Janet and Cynthia were. He was truthing and spreading the message, and he was platforming himself with other content creators online until one day he was arrested with no notice, no subpoena, no nothing. He was taken to court and then extradited back to his home state, which was the Netherlands. He was left in prison for quite a while, awaiting his whole trial to even find out what he was being charged with in the first place. Slander, defamation, spreading lies, all this stuff. And at the end of everything, they said that they would
something happened to him. He doesn't look the same.
Place quite a while. I did known for content creators online until when he was platformer.
Oh, that's a drawing. What is it he's got on his head?
With no back awaiting information.
Right there. Is that a shadow of louvers or something on his head, or is that a tattoo or scars? What happened to his head? And he's got his cheek. He looks like he was in an accident. But anyway, this is a guy he's talking about that was falsely imprisoned in Holland because he became a truther. And he was doing a lot of what like Sobering Stories is doing. They're just making videos on people who've disappeared and putting out one every week on different people he's done. I'll show you if you look at Sobering Stories really quick. I'll show you how many he's done. Videos. Look at the subjects. You've got Disappearance of Janet Ossibard, this one, Madeline McCann. You've got Andy Kaufman. He did one about Jim Carrey. He's done one about Nancy Guthrie. He did one about the Pizzagate shooter. He's done one about more Epstein file things. And he did Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk, that whole mess. Rob Reiner, Stanley Kubrick, the Apollo moon landing. Did not happen. JFK, Marilyn Monroe, Anna Nicole Smith, Britney Spears, Diddy, Michael Jackson, Prince, Elvis Presley, the Charlie Kirk Patsy. Just, he puts out really interesting videos. You know, he's only been doing this for a little bit over a year. I don't even think he's been into it 2 years yet. And he's phenomenal. Just his graphics, the way, here's his video about Chris Cornell, Juice WRLD, Whitney Houston, all of these celebrities, Matthew Perry. You hear about people that self-exited this world, and then you find out later on that there were actually facts, and it turns out that there was probably a conspiracy behind it. These exiting of these people from this world because things come up, or sometimes things disappear. And it's so bad. It's just like every single one. Goodness, you name a celebrity that has died. You know, and you've got like, what's his name? We talked about the Star Whackers. He's got a famous brother also that's an actor. Randy Quaid. Dennis Quaid's brother. Randy Quaid's talking about Star Whackers. And he's talking about there's a group of people in Hollywood that I'm going to call the Star Whackers. Basically, that's what Sobering Stories is talking about here. So I watched Sobering Stories. Shout out to him. Click on his channel and watch that. He's got really interesting content. Let's go back to what we were talking about on the
online until one day he was arrested with no notice, no subpoena, no nothing. He was taken to court and then extradited back to his home state, which similar position as Janet and Cynthia were. He was truthing and spreading the message, and he was platforming himself with other content creators online until one day he was arrested with no notice, no subpoena, no nothing. He was taken to court and then extradited back to his home state, which was the Netherlands. He was left in prison for quite a while, awaiting his whole trial to even find out what he was being charged with in the first place. Slander, defamation, spreading lies, all this stuff. And at the end of everything, they said that they would release him, but he would have to agree to never talk about any of the things he was talking about ever again. He'd have to completely leave behind his whole body of work, his message, the truth. He'd have to just walk away. And if he didn't, then they would bring the full force of the law against him. Truth can be a dangerous game, y'all. And Janet and Cynthia knew that better than anyone.
We are not allowed to go on the streets anymore with more than 3 people, I think 3 or 4. And they're going to change it probably from next Monday on to 2. 2 people. It's insane. It is worse now than it was in 1938, 39.
Obama made an order like that. What is it? No more than 5 people can meet in public?
Nomadically, living out of their camper van. But you can imagine Fall of the Cabal brought quite a bit of heat into their lives, and they were a bit scared, honestly. So starting in late 2020, they decided to go mobile, and they basically lived on the run. They were moving place to place, never staying in one place for too long. They didn't really have any technology besides computers that were off the grid. They didn't have cell phones. They really lived as quiet and hidden as they possibly could, which is probably one of the main reasons I couldn't find any information about either one of them for this this video. But living the van life, constantly traveling, looking over your shoulder in fear that the work that you've put out, the eyes that you've opened up, and the people that you've called out might have severe consequences, I'm sure that's not an easy life to live. And on top of everything else, we have no way to verify this, but Cynthia says that Janet had amazingly serious depression to the point where she hated life. That's her own words. She hated life. Apparently, it was so bad that Janet was on some sort of medication, taking something, and we're not even really sure if it was for the depression. Maybe she was taking pain medication. Maybe she had some sort of anti-anxiety. We really don't know. It could have been anything. We just know that she was taking some sort of medication. And the reason we know that is because on November 16th, she left a note saying that she was going to go pass herself away. She was going to leave. She wanted to be left alone. She wanted Cynthia to respect her wishes. There was likely some message for her family in there. She was going to take the van, go off by herself, and pass herself away. After finding this note, Cynthia says that she looked for a little while, but ultimately decided the best thing for her to do would be to respect Janet's wishes and let her go off and do her thing. She also says that she was living between hope and despair for a total of 5 weeks. Why 5 weeks? Well, because it's not until December 22nd that Janet's body is actually found in her camper van on some guy's
The beginning
private
of
property.
winter
Now, this
solstice.
landowner is located near Lund, Sweden, so quite a ways away from the Netherlands, and we're not really sure where her and Cynthia were staying. We're not sure how far away from their campsite or whatever she.
You know what? I'm not going to watch this fully, but she was found in her van 5 weeks later on private property, where on the very first day that she parked there, when she did that to herself, the owner of that land called and said, "There's a van out there. I want you to come and remove it." And they didn't remove it. And he ended up calling like 3 times over a 3-week period. Why did not that person look in the van and find out what had happened? You know, why did it take 5 weeks? Anyway, this is what happens when you make a video series like this. This one is called The Fall of the Cabal. Now, this is UFOs Around the World channel, this guy. He's talking about it. This isn't actually The Fall of the Cabal series. I think I found it. Fall of the Cabal. Disappearance of Janet, the Wonder House Adventures. I don't have it pulled up right now, but go look up The Fall of the Cabal. But you may recognize the voice of the narrator. Listen to the woman narrating this video.
Everybody else, when there's houses for sale in the Jewish area and I want to buy it.
For instance, against Ebola, yellow fever, Zika, the flu, and Gardasil, which was further developed and promoted by billionaire and partner in crime Bill Gates. Every case of dangerous side effects such as miscarriage, autism,
H1N1.
sterility, seizures, paralysis, and death was brought before the FDA and cleared. And all of the above was promoted by doctors and the media, where the Rockefellers had placed their representatives at the highest levels.
Drink.
$55 billion.
Soros.
Soros was born in Hungary. After World War II, he moved to England and then on to the US, where he made a fortune with his hedge funds and his merciless ways to manipulate the financial market, using crises to further increase his own wealth and expand his power. He prides himself in taking no responsibility for his actions and the destruction he caused to literally millions of people.
If you've ever heard of crisis actors, Soros employs thousands of them, I think. A lot of major events in the world that you see. I even think, was it January 6th? Do you remember the Bastille Day parade in France where the truck ran over all those people in that parade? those were actors because they actually focused in on the cameras that people were showing there. And there were actually cloth dummies laying on the ground, and they were showing people putting artificial blood on themselves. Basically, it's like a whole troupe of crisis actors showed up. They all got their little blood kits and their props and their costumes, and they laid themselves on the ground. And then they had a driver in the truck that said, "Okay, ready, 1, 2, 3, go!" And they acted out the whole drama with the truck and everything. And then it goes on the news. And then people like us, it goes around social media quickly, and we all see behind the scenes what really happened, and these were crisis actors. And you have people, where was it? There was one person, she lists them, she shows them, I'm looking, that people who were injured in 3 different events, but because they're crisis actors. And she showed one kid that got shot in the back of the head, and all he had was a Band-Aid on the back of his head. Oh, where was it? But these are things that you and I have seen. If you're listening to me, you've seen a lot of this. But I don't know if you noticed, but I remember, I think it was the Orlando Pulse event where there was a guy that was interviewed by a news reporter, and he's like, "Yeah, I got shot right here yesterday. Yeah, and it went right through." And he shows like a little red bump, looks like a mosquito bite, and he's like, "Yeah, I got shot right here, and I'm doing it." You can tell what it is it's a young kid. It looks like he's only 18, 19 years old. And he's pretending that he got shot because he's being told to, okay, here's the director. Okay, you're on camera. Now tell him you got shot, and you remember, you're a victim, and you're saddened, and your friend died, and you got shot too, and tell him you got. And so he's going, "Yeah, I got shot here," and he's moving his arm like this, and if you got shot, you're not going to move your arm. You're going to be in a sling in a hospital bed if you survive, And yet this guy was like pointing, "Yeah, it went right here and came out right here." Like, this kid's doing his best at acting when he doesn't even realize how those type of projectile wounds work. It's so obvious. You have scenes where there are riots, where during the riot, a truck will show up and drop off a pallet full of bricks and drive off. And then the rioters run over and grab bricks and start throwing them. So, well, who ordered the bricks? It's like, I've noticed even on January 6th, the people with the costumes, and there was a couple of guys that had a rope, and one of them went up the steps in front of the Capitol building and then dropped the rope down, and the other guy was trying to scale up the wall like Batman. And it was silly, and I just thought, I've got one of those minds where when I see something on the news and I see crisis actors doing something really stupid, I can see it. There was one in the Boston event, the Boston running event, where suddenly there was a device that suddenly expanded and a loud noise and with smoke, and there was a couple of people pushing a guy in a wheelchair across the street, and his leg fell off. He had a prosthetic limb, his leg, and they had his pants torn and showed his leg all bloodied, and his jeans were ripped open, and they were pushing him across the street, and his leg fell off, the one that was all bloody with the torn jeans. The whole thing fell off, and then one of the guys pushing runs around and goes, "I'll get it." He picks it up and sticks it back on the guy's stump, and they continue running. Just pay attention. Sometimes the acting is so bad that you can spot crisis actors. And they're everywhere. And there are people being identified that have been in several events. Someone will be in an event in London one day, and the next day they're in Connecticut, and then they're in an event in Orlando, and then they might even be in an event in Las Vegas. Same people. There's just one lady, they even have a name for her, like Crisis Carol or something like that. She was in London, she was in Paris, and she was at the Connecticut school event. And she says the same thing. Basically, I knew his mother, and I knew him. Nice kid. Basically, you never would have thought. It just seemed like good people, you know. And they get all these people, and I actually think that that guy Adam, last name starts with an L, he did not exist. His photograph was made from a composite from who they called his brother, the one that was in New York City, and they took his photograph and made it weirder with the big psycho-looking bug eyes, and you can see straight angles in his neck where you can tell it's CGI graphics where they cut and pasted, and there's a perfectly straight line, looks like the edge of a ruler, from like his ear to his collarbone. And it's not natural looking. If you just start to look at the pictures, and you could tell his eyes were enlarged to make him look more insane. And that was the picture that goes out in the news. And do you know that that's legal? In the United States, that's called Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird, where the news media the White House can put together press junkets and put together stories if it is supposed to help protect the American people. And even George W. Bush was asked about it. They said one of the reporters said, does the White House approve Operation Mockingbird press junkets and submit them to the news to run when stories are made? And he said, yeah, as long as we do them within the guidelines that were set by Congress, of course. So they don't even deny it. But it's just people who don't pay attention. It's like, pay attention. If you tell someone like my sister that, she's like, oh my God, shut up. So negative, man. It's like, just pay attention. I'll show you some stuff. No, I don't want to look. Why is it every time you want to show people something that you can prove, like, oh my God, I found this, and I found the piece that matches here, and this person, and here's the evidence, and there's the proof. I connected the whole thing together, and I want to show you all of it. Just, if you give me 10 minutes. No, it makes me feel I don't want to see it. I know, no. God, stop it with your theories. No, I just told you. I can show you the proof. Once and for all, let's just listen to me and let me show you the proof. So you quit calling me a theorist. No. And they won't let me. That's more about the narcissistic personality disorder I was talking about. You have someone who was possibly SA'd as a child who doesn't remember any of it, but shows all of the signs and the symptoms of completely ignoring. There's another person in my family who stole some money from me. And when I tell them, I saw you steal that money. Well, you're a son of a bitch. Well, I was trying to get my money back. You grabbed me. Well, you just stuck my money in your pocket. Why did you grab me? It's like, what did I just say? My God. Some people, they, whenever you have somebody that just ignores what you're saying, like you didn't even just say it, and they just wait for it to like dissipate and disappear like a fart. Sometimes they linger, and you're like, it's still lingering, this is real. And you get just silence. I can tell you my sister-in-law is popping up in my mind about that. Just, God, it's like. So what am I talking about? People who don't believe these things. Here we are, this Janet Osegard puts together this video series called The Fall of the Cabal, and she's spelling out all of these events, all of these people who do the, let's call it the younger people traveling networks without their permission. Those are the people that seem to disappear or get exited from this world, or people who, if you go to make a movie about that, like Jim Caviezel, is that who this is? You could be, here what they're talking about now is these are actors. Look at the flip-flops on this guy. Here what they're talking about is we've been shown immigration pictures of people crossing the borders, flooding into this country, by 1 million a year, 2 million a year. And yet, when you look at the photos of who's marching, they're wearing flip-flops. So you obviously can tell that these people showed up as crisis actors for a filming event and got paid for it. To walk down the street, to look like illegal immigrants. And they've walked 45 miles a day, like let's say from Colombia. And they've had to walk about 2,000 miles, and they've averaged 45 miles a day. And they've all got fresh clothes on, and they're wearing flip-flops. Look for little details like that. When you see this in the news, I didn't even notice that. But this is what Janet Olsabard was showing this whole series. And now she's gone in 2023. They say that she self-exited, but we're wondering if she had a handler that set her up and actually took her out. Let me go back so you can hear that. Oh, I'm pointing at all this stuff and I don't even have the right screen for you. I'm sorry. Let me go back. Where's the volume? Why is there not volume on? Was that
deployed to transport all of these people from Honduras to the US border? From Honduras.
Look at that. These are the people with the flip-flops.
All of these people from Honduras to the US border. Flip-flops? No problem. You only have to get out of the van occasionally for a group photo.
Everybody say cheese.
Next, in order to get as many people as possible, you pay them. Thanks to some alert anons, this was filmed on site.
Everybody's getting paid cash.
This is shocking for people that may not have seen this, what they're actually doing. They drive these people around, they pay them, they put wristbands on them, so them wristbands are for certain images and for certain moments of the videos and pictures.
Then, in order to be efficient for the media, you give the main players a coloured wristband. Brilliant! Different colours have different meanings, all known to the reporters and the cameramen.
Look at that. They're wearing wristbands. I never noticed that. They're actually wearing wristbands. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Cry, baby, cry.
Some people overact. Others are really convincing and make it to the World News Report. Meet Maria Meza and her 5 children, all the way from Honduras.
Barefoot.
She made it to every news item on TV, telling about her terror, the fear for her children, their eyes all wet and swollen due to the tear gas that the American Border Patrol so viciously threw at them. Well, Maria, there are a few flaws in your story. I've looked at every single picture of you and your beautiful girls. None of them show any signs of tear gas.
Focused, but not scared.
This picture clearly shows that you are the only ones in action. The cameraman shoots away, completely uninjured by the gas. And there is no panic.
Smiling observer.
Let's have a closer look at this picture.
Yeah. You know, there was a picture I was going to tell you real quick. I remember back, how long ago was it? 6, 7 years ago? Charlottesville. Do you remember there was there were some things that went down in the South? Remember was it Charlottesville or another town? And when they had this policeman with this barrier and he was telling people, don't go beyond this point, and he was holding his hands out. And yet there was this, not even reporters, and there was this guy that came walking up to him in front of him with the microphone, and he just let him walk by. And then it shows people walking right past him in both directions. So he's standing out there overacting, holding the crowd back. But there are people from the crowd and from behind him walking back and forth right around him. So the whole thing was a setup. It was a lot of events are actors. They did not happen. I remember the one, and do you remember the car? I think that was the one in Charlottesville where it was a Dodge Challenger that charged into a crowd of people that were demonstrating and mowed over some people. Remember that? Well, I actually saw a video on that one where somebody got cell phone video that people had submitted that went viral, where people were waiting and waiting and waiting, and the Challenger was parked 2 blocks down the street with cones around it, like nobody disturbed this vehicle. It's on set. Wait for the director to say action. You know, it was like, and then it showed this one woman. She was wearing shorts and like running shoes, and she stood in front of the car, and it showed her right when the Dodge Challenger comes up in front of her. She runs towards it like she's a long jumper, and she goes step, 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 and leaps up and turns her back like a long jump, and she lands on the hood of the car and rolls off the other side and completes her. She was a stunt woman for that crisis act in that event. And these things go around. A lot of times they go up, they get uploaded on YouTube, and sometimes they'll get taken down pretty quickly. But usually you'll find them on the first day of the events. By the second day, a lot of the videos start disappearing. And if you're one of the people that uploaded one of those videos, your video just disappears. You don't get a strike or anything. Your video is just gone. You may try to upload it again, but they'll probably just take it down again. So there's really shady censorship going on. I've been in this. I've had this, even though my channel's tiny, I've been somewhat involved in uploading videos and looking into all of this stuff since 2007, 18 years now. And there's all kinds of chicanery, shenanigans going on with crisis actors. Let's go back and see what they were saying about these refugees, alleged. Oh, let me go back and put the camera on there.
Oh wait, look! Somebody is throwing a gas canister. Is that a fellow refugee? Maria told the press that her son went back the next day to get the canister and show it to the reporters. Shame on you, America. I do hope Maria was paid handsomely, I really do, but her story sucks. The family was photographed on another day, getting out of a van for yet another day's work in front of the camera. And the tear gas canister? You can buy them at any theatre prop retailer, or you can use the police training variety. They produce white smoke, but no harm is done. I guess Trump's statement was correct. No tear gas was used on the children. The entire mainstream media coverage of this event was biased and flawed. My advice to the producers, next time, pay more attention to the details, for the anons are onto you. Refugees who walk for thousands of miles do not walk like this. Or like this. They don't
Taking their toys with them.
They don't have brand new pink buggies. They do not polish their nails. They don't wear iron shirts. Neither do they have perfect haircuts and makeup. When they say they flee their country because they're so poor they can't even buy food, don't show them with digital cameras and iPhones. Refugees who walk for thousands of miles are not clean. And for God's sake, pay attention to some of your supporting actors.
Somebody came with a friend. Wait, what is she pointing out there? Oh, that they're white people? Maybe they're not Hispanic, Latino.
And when you Photoshop someone into a picture...
Oh, what are those frogs? Not frog. What do you call Crocs? That man's wearing Crocs. There's a white dude wearing Crocs.
Someone into a picture, make sure you don't forget his leg. Oh, and make up your mind, will you? Do you want the shirt on or off? And what's with the Disney obsession?
I never liked Disney.
When you really want to know what's going on in the world, you have to do the research, just like Q keeps saying. And when you do, you will see what's real and what's not. The migrant caravan was a staged event with a political motive. Who was behind it? Who financed such a great event? George Soros. That's right, our great benefactor George Soros, connected to the pedophile club NAMBLA and the rioting and violent Antifa and Black Lives Matter. How do we know he's behind all of these so-called social movements?
NAMBLA, have you ever heard of that? Who was the director? Spielberg. NAMBLA, what's that? Man Love Association? Man Boy Love Association, NAMBLA. National Association of Men Who Love. What was it? The Man Boy Love Relationship Club. And he's a registered member. There was a movie that Spielberg made that was his very first movie, or one of his very first movies, about a guy on the beach in Malibu who's after this girl, but at the end of the movie she finds out that he's homosexual. And the way she finds out is because she finds Pepto-Bismol in his backpack, which I guess is it Pepto. There's some pharmacy product that's supposed to make your lovemaking unit less smelly and more tolerable if you consume the product before an act, which is gross. But you would only know that if you were in the club. And it's in the movie. If people like me would watch that movie, and the last scene, I remember, I've seen the last scene, and she opens up the guy's backpack while he's out swimming in the waves, and she sees his bottle of Pepto-Bismol or whatever it is, and she's like, oh, he's gay. I didn't know that. But these things have been going on. Like I said, this is Spielberg's first movie. And you hear about rumors, and then you look at the movies made, and you look at the associations, and she just said that Soros is a card-carrying member. Let me go back. Did you hear that?
How do we... And the rioting and violent Antifa and Black Lives Matter. That's right, our great benefactor George Soros, connected to the pedophile club NAMBLA and the rioting and violent Antifa and Black Lives Matter. How do we know he's behind all of these so-called social movements? Well, it's not really a secret.
He doesn't
According to
secretly
an
keep it.
analysis of his tax filings, he invested $33 million in the notorious Ferguson riots alone. Soros promised everyone who participated in the massive protests $15 an hour. In the case of the migrant caravan, all they had to do was play the part of poor refugees looking for a safe haven. Money, new clothes, food.
I haven't watched that yet. You just said that Jesus died in the UK. Is that what was said on the Y-Files last night? Alan Wilson.
Jesus died in India.
I don't know who Alan Wilson is, I don't think. I'll have to check that out.
Toys.
Hold on. And on a different topic, someone in his chat just said that Jesus died in the UK. I already knew that he did not die in Israel, but he's got a tomb in Kashmir, India, in the town of Srinagar. And his name was Isa. He was known to people around the world in all these different countries as Isa, and he traveled all the way across the mountains, across the Himalayas, into Tibet. And he went as far northwest as Scotland. They say with his father, Joseph, they on the shipping trade with furniture and wood, they would go on ships all the way to Scotland. You know, he went through Portugal and then up the coast and all the way up to England and Scotland. So people are saying, a lot of people think he died there in Scotland. That's where the movie with Tom Hanks started and all that about the Scotland, what's it called? The movie that starts in Paris, France. Somebody gets murdered. The Rose, I can't even remember the name. Tom Hanks was in it. That's another figure to talk about, Tom Hanks. But the Jesus not dying in Israel is another topic we can talk about. Did you know that? He did not die in Israel. I was reading myself, all by myself. I'm jumping around on topics, but that's what's the great thing about this live stream. It's Ask Me Anything. And since there's nobody yet, and you're going to watch this on playback, I can change subjects anytime I want. So since he just brought up Jesus died in the UK, there was a, what was I going to tell you? The stories about, what I found was in the Quran. I was reading the Quran because I have a copy of it in a book called Harvard Classics. And it's got all of the great literary works of mankind since the first books, the Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer, all the way through. And the volume 17, I think, had the Quran. I didn't even realize I had it until one day. I'm like, oh, I've got the Quran. Wow. So I just started flipping through it and I was reading. And I turned to this chapter called Anisa, the chapter of women. Anisa. And it says in there that Mary, no, it says Isa, son of Mary, was not actually killed in the blue and white country, but those people faked it, and he didn't actually die, but they needed to have him be a sacrifice to create their new religion for the Goyim. Today we call that Christianity. So I'm basically a person who was raised on Christianity, but I don't know what to do now because there's no religion I want to belong to, and I don't believe in a sacrifice or in resurrection because that was all hoaxed. Resurrection is sun worship. That's when you baptize. Romans chapter 6 says we're buried and we're born again in a new life. So, but it's on winter solstice. So the sun stops in the same place and sets. The sun sets and rises in the same spot on the horizon for 3 days, and then it starts going north again. That's called the Tropic of Capricorn. And when it sits on that line for 3 days, they call it the sun dies for 3 days. So they literally made that into a religion and say that the sun died for 3 days and was resurrected, because what happened was the whore of Babylon, known as Inanna or Astarte, or it would be Isis in Egypt. Her husband died. She married her son. He got murdered. He died on December 22nd. And then she told her people in her empire, he's resurrected and he's gone up into the sun and he's your sun god now. So that's how the sun god Ra or Baal is actually the sun god. So the baptism is about the whole story of how the son of the whore of Babylon, whose name was Tammuz, became Baal or Baal. And a lot of Christians don't know that. And if you tell Christians that story, they'll tell you, oh, no, they've just copied that and adapted it because it just happens to be on winter solstice. And that's what people say. But no, Jesus was, crucified and he resurrected. And it's, it's like chicken or the egg. Why don't you see it? It's like all of this religious stuff is around winter solstice. It's called astrotheology because it's based on astronomy and the sun dying on winter solstice. It's even marked in St. Peter's Square with the obelisk. You look at the shadow that the obelisk casts on the circle around the square, circling the square. That's an esoteric Freemasonic term, circling the square. If you look at the shadow that the obelisk puts on the ground around the square as it goes around the year, it marks the summer solstice, the winter, the fall, spring, and the summer, and the winter solstice. All that means, solstice is where the sun stands. So it's like sol is sun, stis is stationary position. So the sun's position in the summer, sun's position in the winter. And if you know anything about astronomy on a globe, I can do it on a flat model or a globe model, but on a globe model, The furthest north that the sun goes on winter solstice is called the Tropic of Cancer. Some of you may not know how it works, but the Tropic of Cancer is north. That's when we have our hottest days in the summer. And then as the fall comes, days get shorter and shorter and shorter for us up here in the north, where I'm at in the United States, until the sun gets all the way down on December 22nd. It hits the Tropic of Capricorn, which means that's the furthest south the sun goes. And for 3 days, it doesn't go north or south. It just goes around the same parallel for 3 days in a row. And on the third day, it starts going north again. And so that's when they say, literally, the sun dies for 3 days because it's not going south anymore. And then it's resurrected, so it starts coming north again. So people in the northern hemisphere were noticing when you watch the sunset, you can mark this on your porch or your windowsill. If you stand in the same spot and watch the sun rise or set, why don't you mark it in pencil? If you're on your porch and you sit in the same chair in the same spot, mark on the rail on your porch where the sun set in the summertime. And you'll notice as you go into August in the northern hemisphere, as you go into August and September, October, you'll notice that your pencil marks start heading in a southerly direction. And then if you can mark it all the way to December 22nd, you'll put the same pencil mark for 3 days, and then you'll start going back to the right. If you're looking at the sunset, it'll start going north again. And that's literally, a lot of people don't even know how to describe what winter solstice means in the Tropic of Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer. Research it, look it up, and look it up well enough to where you can explain it. It's very interesting, and it's what Christianity is all about. But anyway, that all came up because someone in his chat said Jesus died in England. I think it was India. Look up the Rosa Bal Shrine. Rosa, Rosa Bal Shrine in Srinagar, Kashmir. Srinagar. Kashmir. And he's got a tomb there. And they say that's where Jesus is buried. And they've got the person that's buried in that tomb has his feet were placed in cement, and it shows scars on the bottom of his feet. And his body is buried from east to west in the direction of, did you know that in cemeteries, Christians are buried with their bodies facing east to west? And the Islamic people face their bodies from north to south. And his body in that shrine, there's other people in there, another person that's buried north to south, and his body's buried east to west. If that means anything. But I believe the Lord existed. There was a man in Israel that was most likely the Son of God, the creator of earth, who incarnated, came down, lived in Israel, but he escaped. And he went all over the world because there are municipal records of him living all over the world. There's records of him going to China and giving a sermon that was just like Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount, to a monastery of Chinese monks on a cliff somewhere. And these Protestant missionaries found it in the 1990s. And the monks said, hey, you want to see the scroll when Jesus came here and visited us? We wrote down everything he said. And they compared it to Matthew chapter 5. And then there's stories of him in Syria, all the way to Tibet. He studied with Tibetan monks. I think if there was ever a story about him walking on water, he learned it from the monks between when he was 12 years old till when he was 30. And he probably went back after he escaped. The weird thing that I was taught when I was raised, when Jesus died, they put him in the tomb and they rolled this big stone in front of it, right? But then you're told that angels rolled away the tombstone and he came out. My mother, I think it was, told me, her Sunday school teachers, that the stone was so heavy that no one could move it, but these angels were strong enough and they just rolled it away. Well, then who put it there and who closed it? It's like, there's so many facts that just don't add up. And I've read the Bible 7 times, twice in Spanish and once in Portuguese. And twice out loud with my ex-wife. We used to read a chapter a night when we first got married. I've taught Sunday school. I know a lot about the Bible. And right now, I believe the Bible is full of holes, just like Swiss cheese. The whole gospel. Now that you take out the resurrection as being sun worship, and that whole story, that means the Gospels and Paul and everything about it is made up. As usual, it's probably based on a real person. The Lord really incarnated, but the story that's told is hijacked. Let's get back to these immigrant actors. Sound is coming, I think. Hold on. Just have to wait a few seconds. Come on.
More riots, this time by angry actors who demanded payment. Videos of Antifa members shouting, "Soros, Soros, where's our money?" went viral, yet everything was hushed up by the mainstream media. So, what's his motive?
Soros, where's our
Why would
money?
anyone invest so much money in these massive and well-organized movements? To destabilize a country, to create division. Division by skin color, by political wing, by religion, by gender. A divided people is easy to rule. A united people is not.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Q phenomenon. As we have seen in part
So,
2,
folks,
Q strongly
I haven't seen
emphasizes the
anyone place
importance to
anything in the
unite.
chat yet for me to talk about,
United
so I
we
guess I'm going to
stand,
wrap it up.
divided we fall.
We will have another prayer.
Q portrays a better world.
What I wanted to show you is look up the fall of the Cabal. I just learned about that today. I've heard the voice of her because I've watched snippets of her videos and other people's videos, but I didn't know where it came from. And I'm going to subscribe right now to UFOs Around the World. Interesting channel. But I watched YouTube most of the day. I'm semi-retired, and I just spend a lot of time watching YouTube. I don't watch TV, so the amount of time that you would normally spend playing video games or watching television, I watch YouTube. And I roll with it every day. Like right now, while I'm talking to you, I'm learning about this guy, UFOs Around the World. I'll go back and look at his channel and see what else he's got. And I will look at, I watched this one today about the disappearance of Janet Alsabard, and I did not know who she was. I learned about the monster of Flatwoods and the monster of the Scape Ore Swamp. Terrifying reptilian creatures, both of them, or the one with the weird red eyes that shot laser lights and had a green mist that made everyone sick. The videos are on YouTube if you want to see the fall of the Cabal. I think this is funny. It shows the Illuminati eye on the pyramid, the Masonic symbol, the UN symbol, and then Pfizer. Do you know that the UN flag logo is the flat Earth map? It's the azimuthal equidistant or Gleason map. Also, the World Health Organization and others. There are a few different world and national organizations that, no, they're all world organizations that use the map of the flat Earth as their logo. That's what it looks like. The flat Earth is a different looking map than the one that we know. That's why I had an out-of-body experience. I'm going to tell you where I went up through the planets and looked down, and I saw this giant plane with continents everywhere, but I didn't recognize any of them. Because when you orient them the way they actually are around the North Pole, they, like North America and South America, you can recognize on a globe. You might not recognize it here on the UN map, which is the flat Earth map, or it's also known as the AE map, azimuthal equidistant map, or the Gleason map if you want to look those up. So look on YouTube for those. I was going to watch this, I think right now after I get off here, I'm going to watch the Unsolved Murder Mystery of Betsy Ardsma. That's something that came up that I didn't know anything about yet. So I'm going to go watch that now. And maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow. Oh, have you ever seen this picture? This is the firmament where God is. And I saw this in 1985. I was there. It was an answer to a prayer, and I had an experience and wound up here. Talked to this Lord here. But it was only me. It was dark, but the light was coming from their skin. They were just beaming. They were light beings. But they don't remember that many steps. There might have been 1 or 2 steps. Were there 2? Maybe. But I really like this painting because it shows me that other people have seen it and been there. It's a phenomenon all over the world. I think when they say the Lord came down out of the sky, and like they talk about the second coming, and everybody's waiting for Jesus to come down out of the sky, and then the apocalypse begins and all that. But I think the Lord is actually appearing to people and communicating with people today, each one of us individually. You need to pray and put forth effort, try to purify yourself, have good vibrations, and be a good person. And ask, and you shall receive. So I'll leave that with you. Let's ask. All right. Heavenly Father, thank you for the time that we have here to talk about events in the world, to talk about those actors and people who are doing false things, people who are hiding evil and conducting evil. And we hope and desire that these things end on earth, Father, and we are growing aware more and more, and people on the earth are becoming aware. And it is sad when people disappear who are exposing the truth, and the people known as truthers make videos, and when they disappear or someone says that they exited this world, it's sad. And but we know that they're with thee, and so please bless us to have health and strength and energy to do good things and keep it up. And please grant those who followed this video to this point all the way to the end to bless them, that they may have whatever they are asking for and need. And they have to ask. And this we pray. Amen. All right. See you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.